Welcome to LexiCast, a podcast designed to help you grow in your legal practice, with weekly updates on current topics, trends, and practical insights. Perfect for listening on the go. Let's dive in.
Okay, quick question. Pick one file off your desk right now. Any file. Now, would you still accept that client today?
That's a genuinely uncomfortable question to ask on a Tuesday morning.
Good. It's supposed to be. Because as of the 1st of July, that's not just a nice-to-have gut check anymore. It's baked into the conduct rules.
Right. This is the update everyone's been half ignoring because they were so buried in AML paperwork.
Exactly. And that's the trap. Everyone's attention this year has gone to AML, CTF compliance and AUSTRAC enrolment. For good reason, but the amended Australian Solicitors Conduct Rules commence the same day, 1 July, and they apply to every single solicitor, not just the practices caught by AML.
So even if you did 0 designated services, 0 AML exposure, you're still on the hook here.
Completely. If you haven't touched your client intake procedures, your retainer documentation, or your approach to ceasing to act, this is the week to do it. And we've actually written the changes and practical actions into an article which you can work through with your team. Links in the show notes.
Awesome. Okay, so where do we start? I assume there's a headline number of things to fix.
3. Client acceptance under Rule 8, ceasing to act under Rule 13, and engagement letters under the new Rule 12.
Let's take them one at a time. Rule 8 first, client acceptance. That's not new though, is it? Lawyers have always had to be satisfied instructions are legit before taking someone on.
The requirement itself isn't new, no. What's changed is the emphasis. The amended rule makes it explicit that you have to be satisfied a client's instructions are lawful, proper, and competent before you accept them. And here's the part people are sliding past. That obligation does not stop at intake.
Wait, so it's not a one-off tick box at the start of the file?
No. The rule now makes clear you're meant to keep assessing whether instructions remain lawful, proper, and competent for the entire life of the matter. New clients and existing clients, same standard.
Okay, that's actually a meaningful shift in how people think about it. Because most intake processes I've seen are exactly that, a one-time administrative step. You do the conflict check, you do the ID check, you open the file, and then nobody looks at, is this still appropriate again, unless something blows up.
Right, and to be fair, for a lot of practitioners, this is just what good judgment has always required anyway. If something changes mid-matter, a good lawyer notices. What's different is that expectation is now written into the rules themselves, which means it's now something a regulator or a costs assessor or opposing counsel in a dispute can point to directly.
Give me a scenario. What does this actually look like in practice, not just in theory?
Sure. Say you're 6 months into a commercial matter and the client's instructions at the start were completely straightforward. Then partway through, the facts shift. Maybe there's new information suggesting an instruction is designed to frustrate a court order, or the commercial rationale the client gave you at the start quietly stops making sense. Under the old mindset, you might just keep going because the file was accepted properly at intake. Under the amended Rule 8, that's not good enough. You're expected to notice the shift and reassess, live, whether continuing is still lawful, proper, and competent.
So the practical fix here is what? Building in checkpoints?
Exactly that. Look at your file management process and ask, where is the moment, 3 months into a matter, 6 months in, where someone is prompted to reassess? Not reopen the whole file, just a genuine pause to ask, would I still take this on today, knowing what I know now?
I actually like the exercise you opened with. Pick one live file and ask that question honestly.
That's literally the what to do this week advice. Pick one current file, ask, if I assess this matter again today, would I still accept it? If that question makes you hesitate even slightly, that's your signal to add a second suitability checkpoint into the process.
What's the most common mistake you're seeing firms make with Rule 8 right now?
Treating it as an intake requirement only. Firms nail the front door, good conflict checks, good ID verification, and then never look at the file again through that lens. The obligation continues for the life of the retainer, and it applies just as much to a client you've had for 5 years as one you signed up yesterday.
Interesting. All right, moving on. Rule 13, ceasing to act. This is the one I think people are quietly relieved about.
They should be. The amended Rule 13 gives much clearer guidance on what counts as just cause to terminate a retainer. And it names real scenarios, where continuing to act would put the solicitor in breach of professional or ethical obligations, where the solicitor can no longer act in the client's best interests, and where a client won't provide information the solicitor needs to meet their own statutory obligations.
That last one's interesting. So if a client's stonewalling you on something you need to satisfy, say a reporting obligation, That itself can be just cause to walk away.
Correct. And for sole practitioners and small firms especially, that's gold. Because the honest truth is, most lawyers are really reluctant to terminate a retainer unless the ground is rock solid. Nobody wants a complaint. Nobody wants a fight over it.
It's such a human response, though. You'd rather grit your teeth and keep going than risk getting it wrong by stopping.
Completely human and completely risky in the wrong direction. Because sometimes continuing to act is the thing that creates professional risk for you. A breach of an ethical duty, a breach of a statutory obligation. The amended rule gives you more certainty to recognize that moment and actually act on it.
Walk me through what just cause might look like day to day. I don't think everyone has a clean mental picture of that.
Take the client information example. Say part of your role requires you to be satisfied about the source of funds for a transaction, and the client simply won't provide the documentation, no matter how many times you ask. Before the amendment, a lot of practitioners would just keep pushing forward on that file, hoping it resolves itself, because they weren't sure ceasing to act was justified. Now the rule tells you directly, a client failing to provide information you need to satisfy your own statutory obligations is recognised just cause. You don't have to keep carrying that risk alone.
So what's the actual homework here?
Review your firm's procedures for managing client relationships generally, and check they line up with the amended Rule 13 framework. And don't just do this in your head. Write it down, and make sure whoever else touches client files at your firm knows the update too. Run a short training session if you need to.
And I'm guessing the mistake here is the mirror image of Rule 8. Waiting too long?
Exactly. Waiting until a problem arises. Trying to interpret Rule 13 for the first time under pressure, mid-crisis, with a client on the phone, is a completely different experience to understanding it calmly, in advance, this week, with no live issue on the table.
Okay, last one. And you said this is the one with the most immediate homework. Rule 12, engagement letters.
Yes, and this is the one I genuinely start with, if I only had time for one. New Rule 12. Under the Legal Profession Uniform Legal Practice Solicitors Rules, it is recommended that your client engagement terms address certain statutory reporting and disclosure obligations right from the start of the retainer.
Meaning what goes in the letter, specifically?
3 things. That the solicitor may be subject to statutory reporting or disclosure obligations. That those obligations might, in some circumstances, require the solicitor to terminate the retainer. And this is the one people forget, that the law may actually prevent the solicitor from explaining why the retainer was terminated.
Oh, that's a hard conversation to have with a client after the fact, if it's not already in writing. I have to stop acting for you, and I'm not allowed to tell you why.
Which is exactly why it needs to be set up front, in the engagement letter, before there's ever a live issue. It manages expectations. If the client's read it at the start, it's not a shock later.
Does this apply everywhere in Australia or just some states?
Rule 12 applies directly in New South Wales, Victoria, and Western Australia, the uniform law jurisdictions. Elsewhere, the local regulators have either made an equivalent rule or issued updated guidance on retainer agreements. So practically speaking, wherever you practice, the effect is similar. Nobody gets a free pass on this one.
So if I'm sitting here with a standard engagement letter template that hasn't been touched in years...
Open it today. Check for 3 things. Is a statutory reporting or disclosure obligation mentioned? Is the impact on the retainer clearly explained? And are the limits on disclosure if termination happens actually covered? If any of those 3 are missing, flag it for immediate update. This is not a project you defer to next quarter.
And this is the one where the mistake isn't about the rule itself. It's about where firms focus their energy.
Right. Focusing on internal policies but not the client-facing documents. A firm can have a beautifully written internal compliance policy sitting in a folder that no client ever sees, and still be handing out an engagement letter from 3 years ago that says nothing about any of this. The policy being sound doesn't help you if the document the client actually signs hasn't caught up.
All right, let's zoom out. If someone's listening to this in the car and can only remember 2 things when they get to the office. 1.
First, client assessment doesn't end at intake. Build a genuine checkpoint into live matters, not just new ones, and actually use it. Pick one file this week and ask honestly whether you'd still take it on.
And second?
Second, your engagement letter is probably your fastest compliance win here. Pull up the template today, run it against those 3 Rule 12 checks, and fix what's missing before the next new client walks in the door.
And there's a 4th thing tucked in the source material too, isn't there? Closing the gap between what's written down and what actually happens on a file.
Right, so that's the sanity check underneath all 3 of these. Take one live file and compare it against your documented process. If they don't line up, the problem usually isn't the policy. It's that nobody's actually following it. That's worth knowing before a regulator finds it for you.
And if people want the fuller picture, because we've genuinely only scratched the surface of Rule 8 and Rule 13 here.
Go back to basics. Read the amended rules themselves. And if in doubt, get advice specific to your situation, because none of this is a substitute for that.
Fair caveat. Okay, final thought before we wrap?
Just this. None of these 3 changes are asking you to rebuild your practice from scratch. This isn't a 6-month compliance project. It's a careful, targeted review. Client engagement documents, intake process, and how you manage matters once they're already open. Understanding why the reforms happened matters just as much as the wording itself.
And if you want to know more about these new changes, check out our blog article linked in the show notes. This provides you with written guidelines that you can apply to your practice.
Silver lining. Go check it out.
That's it for this one. Thanks for listening.
That's it for today's episode on LexiCast. If you're looking for more in-depth episodes that can also be claimed as CPD activities, check out our LexiCast CPD page, linked in this episode's notes. Follow us now to stay up to date, and we'll see you next time.